In the 7th year of marriage, Miles Liang's mistress became pregnant. I drafted the divorce papers and moved out of the house. Seeing this, he remained silent for a few seconds before saying, "It's my fault, and I'll do my best to make it up to you. Others say I'm too strong-willed, men in the upper echelons. None of them refrain from dallying with mistresses and concubines. As long as it doesn't threaten the main wife's position, it's overlooked. But I refuse to comply. I've always remembered. That year, I gave up my career as a diplomat to marry Miles Liang and went to Hong Kong alone, and he, to marry me, had his leg bones broken in an accident, yet still climbed Mount Putuor with that broken leg, 3 kneelings and 1 bow, kowtowing all the way up 1,088 steps to pray for our marriage. He has forgotten all this, but I have not." I looked at him and spoke earnestly. "Miles Liang, I don't want your compensation. I want you to leave with nothing." Early March. The awakening of insect season. A relentless downpour had been falling over Harbour City for several days. The accumulated dampness of the rainy season bred a musty odor in the sunless corners. Perhaps it's because the temperature has been fluctuating drastically these past few days. As a result, more and more people are rushing to the hospital. Right now, I'm standing at the end of the corridor in the obstetrics and gynecology department on the 6th floor of Boari Hospital, watching 2 people approach from a distance. "Miles, the doctor said our baby is very healthy. Look, here are the hands and feet." The young girl's face was brimming with an irrepressible smile. She held up the freshly taken ultrasound photo to show the man. What a loving and perfect couple they made. "It would have been even better if that man weren't my husband." A few seconds later, Miles Liang looked up, and our eyes met. The incandescent light overhead cast a cold, gloomy glow. The glass window beside me reflected my current appearance, pale as a ghost. Actually, catching someone cheating is quite pointless. I exhaled a breath of frustration, took out my phone to snap a photo of the two, then turned and walked away immediately after taking it. Almost instantly, hurried footsteps sounded behind me. Miles Liang reached out and grabbed my wrist. He frowned and spoke in a low voice. His voice carried an unnatural hoarseness. "Kala, listen to me. It's not what you think." I stopped in my tracks, glanced back, and scoffed. "Miles Liang, do you think I'm a fool?" "Let go." His expression darkened slightly, but he stubbornly refused to release his grip. He only spoke very quickly to the girl behind him. "Iris, go downstairs first and head back on your own." Iris. I couldn't help but laugh out loud. The name was given by me. Iris, Iris. Contentment brings happiness. From her age of 12 to 22, I sponsored her for 10 years. I personally brought her out from the barren and impoverished mountain wilderness. I can't even remember how many trips I made to the household registration office just to change her name, but I finally managed to change it from Xu Jianyu to Iris Xu, and this is how she repays me now. I looked at the girl, who stood frozen in place, trembling uncontrollably, her head bowed as if too terrified to meet my gaze. Pathetic acting. If you were truly afraid, you wouldn't have gotten pregnant with Miles Liang's child. Suddenly, the girl's cat-like voice spoke up, soft and delicate, tinged with a hint of grievance. "Sister Kala, it's all my fault. If you want to blame someone, blame me. I'll raise this child myself. I won't make things difficult for you." After speaking, she even let out a couple of sobs, staring at Miles Liang as if she couldn't get enough of him, and whispered softly, "Miles, I know you love my sister. I just wanted to tell you. I don't regret it." Miles Liang's expression remained unchanged, only his brows furrowing slightly deeper. An inexplicable gloom seemed to settle over his entire being. I looked at the two of them and felt truly disgusted. Too lazy to say more, I forcefully pulled my wrist away and coldly threw out a sentence. "Miles Liang, I'll have the lawyer send you the divorce papers. Sign them as soon as possible." With that, I turned and walked away. I never expected that Miles Liang would go completely crazy. The next second, he suddenly scooped me up in his arms. The familiar scent made my eyes burn with unshed tears. I gritted my teeth and cursed. "Miles Liang, put me down. Are you out of your mind? Put me down." Hearing this, he not only didn't let go but held me even tighter. Quickening his pace to the elevator and seeing it still stuck on the basement level, He didn't hesitate for a second before turning left toward the stairwell. Behind him, the girl anxiously called out, "Brother Miles, my stomach hurts so much," yet he acted as if he hadn't heard a thing. The fire exit door slammed shut with a bang. From the 6th floor to the 1st, I screamed and cursed at him relentlessly, even struck him twice with an awkward swing of my hand. The force was so strong it split the nails I'd carefully grown. He didn't put me down either. He walked straight to the parking lot and shoved me into the car, furious. I grabbed whatever was at hand and threw it at him. He remained silent, letting me vent without resistance, only carefully reaching out to protect me in case I accidentally hurt myself. Suddenly, a dull thud sounded, and a trickle of blood oozed from Miles Liang's forehead, quickly forming a crimson streak that trailed down past his brow. At last, I could clearly see what was in my hand. It was the car air freshener I had bought, with its compact metal bottle. Easy to grip and highly effective as a weapon. A few seconds later, Miles Liang let out a short sigh. Lowering his voice, he said, "Kala, I know you're angry right now, but things really aren't what you think. Let's go home first, okay?" With that, he bent down and carefully fastened my seatbelt for me. I pressed hard to hold back the rising tears in my eyes and shook my head, saying, "Home? Where is there still a home, Miles Liang? The day you cheated, we no longer had a home together." His fingers paused, unwilling to respond. He pressed his lips together and only spoke after a long silence. Even a death row inmate deserves the chance to plead their case. My head was splitting with pain, and I truly didn't want to argue with him about topics like death row inmates or appeals. I simply fixed my gaze on him and said, "Let me out of the car, don't make me hate you even more." I don't know if those words hurt him. His eyes and brows lowered. An air of dishevelment emanated from his entire being. Just as I unbuckled the seatbelt and pushed him away forcefully to get out of the car, a bolt of lightning suddenly streaked across the horizon. The sky darkened almost instantly. Bean-sized raindrops poured down with deafening roars. The storm intensified its assault. The rain soaked Miles Liang's hair, and the bloodstain began to slide down again, dripping and forming droplets that fell onto the back of my hand. Amidst the rain, he whispered, in such heavy rain, "At least let me take you back." This rain came at the worst possible time, yet it restored some resilience to Miles Liang's heart. I could tell from his expression what was on his mind. If I insisted on getting out of the car right now, I'd probably end up wasting the entire day here. I exhaled a frustrated breath and said coldly, "Take me to the law firm." He responded and gently closed the car door. Even though he knew I was going to the law firm to draft a divorce agreement, he seemed to breathe a sigh of relief. The car started and drove smoothly through the rain. I sat in the passenger seat, pretending to sleep with my eyes closed. The image of that blood stain trickling down Miles Liang's forehead surfaced in my mind. Abruptly, I remembered the year we got married. It seemed just as brutal back then. I still remember. That year marked the 3rd anniversary of my meeting Miles Liang. Not long after my father passed away, he took me back to his home. He knelt before his mother and said he wanted to marry me. In that instant, his mother's expression turned extremely unpleasant. She stared at me intently, as if seeing someone else through me. In just a few breaths, the hatred and anger in her eyes erupted as she raised her hand to slap me, cursing viciously, "A bastard born from a whore, just like your mother. A born seductress, a shameless tramp. How dare you think you can steal my son away? Dream on, as long as I live. Don't even think of stepping into the Liang family's door." Though I had braced myself for his mother's fury, but I never expected her to be so angry that she would actually raise a hand against me in front of Miles Liang. Yet, in the end, that slap never landed on my face. After the sharp sound, it was his mother's voice, filled with shock and fury. "Do you really like this little slut so much? Don't you know she's someone even her own father?" "Mom," Miles Liang sharply interrupted, taking that slap for me instead. Red marks spread across his face, quickly swelling. He shielded me with his body and declared word by word, "I don't care about any of that. All I know is I love her. In this lifetime, I will marry no one but Kala." His mother was furious and slapped him again. Miles Liang didn't even flinch, standing like an immovable mountain, blocking all his mother's resentment before him. Finally, It was his mother who couldn't take it anymore. She threw out a sentence, "I won't agree to this," and kicked us out. At that time, it was raining just as heavily outside. Miles Liang and I sat in the car, looking at the clearly visible slap mark on his face. I couldn't help but say, maybe we should just call it. Kisses rained down like a storm. He bit my lips as if punishing me, kissing me fiercely and relentlessly. By the end, I even felt my tongue being bitten until it bled. The bitter taste of blood filled my mouth. He only stopped when I let out a slight hiss of pain. He lowered his head, looking at me earnestly, and said, "I swore before your father's grave that I would marry you and treat you well for the rest of my life." In that moment, his sincerity felt like a dagger, stabbing straight into my heart. I think, as long as I can marry him, I'm not afraid of losing anything. About 20 minutes later, the car came to a smooth stop in front of Junping Law Firm. Silence filled the journey. The car was as silent as a moving tomb. I slightly opened my eyes, pulling myself out of my thoughts. At this moment, the rain was still pouring down, showing no sign of letting up. With a soft click, Miles Liang opened the car door and plunged straight into the rain. I froze for a few seconds, catching a glimpse in the rearview mirror as he opened the trunk and pulled out an umbrella. Then walked toward me under its shelter. Knock knock. He tapped on the glass with his knuckles. The sound muffled. "Let's go. I'll go in with you." I didn't expect him to suggest going in with me. But, perhaps it's for the best. The sooner we draft the divorce agreement, the sooner this marriage can end. I pushed open the car door and stepped out under the umbrella, deliberately keeping half an arm's length away from him. The umbrella wasn't large enough to cover both of us. He didn't move closer, only tilting the umbrella persistently toward my side. In just a few hundred meters, half of his body was thoroughly drenched by the rain. I was fresh and clean, barely touched by the wind and rain. 2 or 3 minutes later, we walked side by side into the law firm. "Oh my, Mr. Liang. Why is your forehead bleeding? Sit down quickly, Xiao Liu. Bring the first aid kit over." Someone rushed up to us the moment we stepped inside. I was somewhat surprised to see the bloodstain on Miles Liang's forehead and hurriedly called someone to tend to his wound. Without saying a word, I strode toward the conference room, acting as if it had nothing to do with me. Of course, anyone with eyes could tell that the injury was most likely my doing. A few minutes later, Miles Liang pushed the door open and entered, the wound on his forehead already hastily bandaged. I hadn't even opened my mouth when he first glanced around, smiled, and said, "This law firm has grown so large now. I remember back then there were only 2 or 3 lawyers." I slightly furrowed my brows, didn't pick up the thread of conversation, yet couldn't help but recall what this law firm looked like in its earliest days. That year, I gave up my career as a diplomat and went alone to Hong Kong to marry Miles Liang. Perhaps it was because my heart held concerns. After all, law and politics are inseparable, or perhaps it was fate at work. In any case, an unintentional act of mine brought this law firm back from the brink. Over the years, I've watched it grow from a team of 2 or 3 into the largest law firm in Harbor City, and I can't help but feel a sense of shared pride. I was even thinking, if I really have to go to court with Miles Liang in the future, perhaps this will be my last bit of confidence. Seeing my silence, Miles Liang sighed. 7 years. Kala, you've been married to me for 7 years. Suddenly, my emotions surged a little. He also knew that we had been married for 7 years. I looked at him and said bluntly, "Miles Liang, there's no need to reminisce with me. Instead of saying all this, why not offer something more practical in the divorce agreement?" Hearing this, his smile faded, and after a brief sigh, he asked, "Kala, do we really have to go down the path of divorce?" I scoffed, raising an eyebrow mockingly. "What else? Wait for Iris Shu's child to be born so the 3 of us can live together." The thought of the girl I nurtured with care and the man I loved most sneaking around together, even having a child, fills me with rage. How could I not hate them? I spent 6 years with him in Jingju, and another 7 in Gangcheng. 13 years of my life, only to end up like this. I didn't burn bridges with him, not because I wanted to reconcile, but because I couldn't be bothered to waste any more emotional energy on him. Miles Liang fell silent for a long moment. I knew he was weighing the pros and cons, considering whether to agree to my proposal right then and there, and sign the divorce papers, or to delay for a while in hopes that I'd change my mind. I looked out through the floor-to-ceiling window as the rain grew heavier, shaking my head and murmuring, "Qingming is coming soon. I don't want to take you to my father's grave, sign the divorce papers, and let's part on good terms." He finally looked up, staring at me for a long while before finally whispering, "I understand, Kala, I've wronged you, and I'll do my best to make it right." After that day, I never saw Miles Liang again. In the blink of an eye, it's already the end of March. In a few more days, it will be Qingming Festival. This time, I've already made up my mind. I'll take advantage of the Qingming Festival to move back to Jingju and never return. I just didn't expect it. On the eve of returning to Beijing, an unexpected change occurred again. Miles Liang's mother acknowledged Iris Xu and the child in her womb. When I received the call from the law firm and rushed over, Iris Xu was making a huge scene. Her voice was shrill and piercing as she screeched, "I don't agree to splitting the assets equally. Why should Kala Xu take half of Miles's property?" She didn't even bear a single child for the Liang family. Besides, my mother-in-law never acknowledged her in the first place. Now, the child in my belly is Miles Liang's, and I am the rightful daughter-in-law of the Liang family. Hearing her words, I regretted even more the years I spent supporting her education. It seems all the books she read went straight to the cows' stomachs. Had I known it would come to this, I might as well donate all the money to the Stray Animal Association. At least those cats and dogs won't loudly claim that the child I'm carrying belongs to someone else's husband. As for her demand to split the assets equally, it's the compensation Miles Liang gave me. Except for the Liang family's assets, all other properties will be divided equally. The property I can claim is close to 9 figures. Compared to all the savings I had that year, it's hundreds, thousands of times more. A few seconds later, I pushed the door open and entered. Seeing it was me, Iris Xu snorted coldly, standing there with her belly held high and an arrogant demeanor, putting on the airs of a mother basking in her child's status. Not a trace remained of the fragile and aggrieved act she put on in front of Miles Liang. "Kala Xu." There was a hint of excitement in her tone, calling me by my full name, not even bothering to pretend anymore. My mother-in-law said the child in my belly is the legitimate heir of the Liang family, so the family's assets should go to me and my chill. With a sharp crack, I raised my hand and cut her off mid-sentence. She fell silent involuntarily, covering her face as she stared at me in disbelief, stammering, "Why you? How dare you hit me?" I scoffed, "I hit you because I wanted to. Do I need a reason?" With that, I casually found a stool and sat down. He tapped the table with his fingers and said, "You recorded everything she just said, right? She claimed she's pregnant with Miles Liang's child." The people from the law firm beside him nodded repeatedly, pointing at the camera overhead. He added, "Ultra HD, real-time recording, it can be used as court evidence for the lawsuit." Iris Xu paused, gritted her teeth, and was about to speak when someone sharply interrupted her. "Who told you to come here and make a scene?" Miles Liang hurried in with quick steps. Seeing him, Iris Xu immediately put on an act. Her voice softened to the core. "Brother Miles Tilda, I have such a headache. And my stomach hurts too." She pinched her voice, clutched her stomach, and swayed unsteadily as if about to collapse onto him. Miles Liang waved his hand, signaling the bodyguards to restrain her, and said sternly, "If your head hurts, go to the hospital." After speaking, he walked towards me, his brows slightly furrowed. "Kala, are you okay?" I looked up at him. It had been half a month since we last met, and he had lost a lot of weight. "I'm fine," I replied calmly. He nodded as if relieved. Miles Liang's concerned expression seemed to sting Iris Xu. She screamed, "Brother Miles, forget about me if you don't care, but do you not even care about our child? My stomach hurts so much." Miles Liang rubbed his temples heavily and repeated, "If your stomach hurts, go to the hospital." After speaking, he turned to the bodyguard holding Iris Xu and said, "Take her to the hospital and have her stay for a few days." Iris Xu let out another scream, but before she could finish, she was quickly escorted away with support around her stomach. A few seconds later, Miles Liang sighed deeply and said, "Kala, can we talk again?" I shook my head. "We've already discussed everything that needed to be discussed. once the property division is settled, we'll officially divorce. However, I don't want the property, just give me the cash equivalent. In just a second, Miles Liang's frown deepened, and he blurted out, "Why, are you leaving Hong Kong?" I neither confirmed nor denied it and didn't answer. Seeing this, Miles Liang's expression darkened further, almost demanding, "Why, isn't my agreement to divorce enough? Kala, why do you have to leave Hong Kong?" It seems that agreeing to divorce was already the biggest concession he could make. He doesn't understand why I still want to leave. I smiled and looked at him, saying, "Miles Liang, I married you and stayed in Hong Kong for 7 years, isn't that enough? Do you really expect me to be trapped here for the rest of my life?" I shook my head. One shouldn't be too greedy in life. He betrayed me, yet he still deludes himself into thinking I would stay here. What kind of logic is this? He remained silent for a few seconds, his eyes brimming with unspoken emotions. It instantly reminded me of that year when I was 17. It was a Friday night. I was walking home from school when a group of thugs spotted me as I passed through an industrial area. They cornered me in a dark alley, their lustful gazes shamelessly roaming over my body. Their eyes traveled from my legs to my waist, then lingered on the hidden areas concealed by my school uniform. Terrified and panicked, I had no idea how to escape. I only regret not listening to my father's advice. Taking the shortcut out of laziness, seconds later, they grabbed my arms and tried to push me into a darker, more secluded spot. Terrified, I screamed but had no idea what to do. The final second. It was Miles Liang holding half a brick. He forcefully knocked one of them unconscious and stood in front of me. The ambush only took down one person. The remaining 2 were enraged by Miles Liang's actions. That year, Miles Liang was only 17 years old. No matter how much youthful vigor he had, after all, 2 fists are no match for 4 hands. In the end, he pushed me hard and shouted in a deep voice, "Run towards the light. Don't worry about me, run, now." Tears streamed uncontrollably down my face. I ran like a madman, screaming for help at the top of my lungs. Fortunately, it wasn't too late at that time. Occasionally, there were people and vehicles passing by on the main road outside the industrial park. When I returned to Miles Liang's side with the kind-hearted person, he was gripping one of the 2 men tightly, while the other limped away into the depths of the industrial park. He was covered in heavy makeup, his face streaked with blood. At that moment, the way he looked at me was just like now. Tension and obsession. Suddenly, Miles Liang's phone rang. The urgent ringtone snapped me out of my memories. I could tell he didn't really want to answer, but after a quick glance, he picked it up and shouted into the phone, "Mom, what's up?" Turns out it was Miles Liang's mom. Not sure what was said on the other end. Miles Liang looked at me. After hesitating for a few seconds, he refused. "Mom, don't interfere with my and Kala's matters. I'll handle it myself." Hearing his words, I could probably guess what his mom had said. All these years, his mother has never been satisfied with me. She has never even loosened her lips to acknowledge my status. In truth, it's just the love and hate of the older generation. It said, my father, my mother, and Miles Liang's mother, the 3 of them grew up together in Jingju since childhood. My father was madly in love with my mother. Miles Liang's mother also adored my father deeply. If my mother had loved my father too, they would have gotten married. Perhaps Miles Liang's mother would only grieve for a while. It's just a pity that my mother never loved my father. She lived her life indulging in pleasures, loving only freedom. Although my mother didn't love my father, but she wouldn't allow him to love anyone else either. This twisted love triangle made Miles Liang's mother despise mine intensely. After graduation, Miles Liang's mother headed south to the coastal city of Hong Kong, while my father remained in Jingju and entered politics, and my mother traveled the world, flitting about like a colorful butterfly, leaving traces of affection everywhere. Finally, in her 30th year, she had me, no one knows with whom. Perhaps it was due to her age, or maybe for other reasons. In short, she gave birth to me and raised me until I was 10. At the age of 40, she chased after the man she was passionately in love with and went abroad, leaving me with my father before her departure, the man who had remained unmarried for her all those years. Miles Liang's mother knew everything that happened during this time. The clearer she became, the more she hated my mother. She couldn't understand why she lost to such a woman. Frustration and regret turned into anger and resentment. Later, Miles Liang's mother married and had children in Hong Kong. Everything had been peaceful all along. Miles Liang and I were like two parallel lines, with no possibility of ever intersecting, until the year I turned 16, when something major happened to the Liang family. Miles Liang's father was sent to prison. His mother had initially wanted to send him abroad, but she feared some unforeseen mishap might occur. After much deliberation, she ultimately decided to send him to Jingju instead. By that time, my father had already risen to a high-ranking position. It was under these circumstances that Miles Liang and I first met. 6 years later, my father passed away due to illness. He left me what he believed was the best path. However, fate played its tricks. I fell in love with Miles Liang and abandoned my career as a diplomat. I followed him to Harbor City. Now, I have to return to the capital alone once more. The person who would spare no effort to take care of me is no longer here. Truly, such is fate. A few minutes later, Miles Liang seemed to be arguing with his mother. I couldn't be bothered to listen to their mother-son showdown anymore. I stood up, ready to go out for a smoke and get some fresh air. Just stepped out of the law firm, about to light a cigarette from the pack. A black Cayenne executed an incredibly stylish drift, coming to a perfect stop right in front of me. Seconds later, the window rolled down. The person inside reached out to light my cigarette. A slender lady's cigarette was held between my fingertips. Tiny sparks emitted a hint of rose fragrance. The man sat in the passenger seat, dressed in a short black leather jacket with a simple dark green shirt underneath. He unbuttoned a few buttons at the collar, revealing a silver necklace around his neck. It was a gift I gave him that year to celebrate his big deal. Chen Junping, the de facto head of the law firm, now the highest paid lawyer in Hong Kong. He was exceptionally handsome, especially his eyes, bright and profound. His sharply defined features exuded a wild, powerful energy. At the moment, he was toying with a metal lighter in his hand. He had an utterly unyielding, reckless air about him. I froze for a few seconds, then looked at him and asked, "Weren't you attending a lawyers' forum abroad? How are you back already?" Just as I finished speaking, Miles Liang finally ended his phone call. He followed me out as I pushed the door open. The moment he saw Chen Junping, his brows involuntarily furrowed. He quickened his pace as if eager to reach me. Chen Junping raised an eyebrow at me and said swiftly, "Get in the car." Without a second's hesitation, I pulled open the car door and slipped inside. Our coordination was seamless. Get in, lock the doors, and hit the gas. The black Cayenne was like a bolt of lightning in the rainy night. It shot forward in an instant. Miles Liang froze, then quickly snapped out of it, trying to get into his own car to chase us. What a pity. This Cayenne accelerates from 0 to 100 km per hour in just 1.9 seconds. Once the car got onto the ring road and completely left Miles Liang behind, for some reason, I felt an inexplicable sense of relief. Chen Junping sat in the driver's seat, one hand resting on the steering wheel, one arm was half bent, resting against the car window, fingers tapping a leisurely rhythm on the glass. Every now and then, he glanced at me through the rearview mirror. His gaze made me slightly uncomfortable, and I cleared my throat before asking, "What brought you back so suddenly?" "I remember the forum won't end until late April at the earliest." Hearing this, he withdrew his gaze and spoke with unexpected seriousness. "If you don't come back soon, I'm afraid you'll be devoured without even leaving a bone behind." I pressed my lips together and remained silent. A few sour bubbles suddenly surfaced in my heart. After my father passed away, I followed Miles Liang to Harbor City. Jingju lies to the north, while Harbor City is to the south. The two places are separated by 6 provinces, with significant differences in geography, culture, climate, environment, and dietary habits. It took me a full 7 years to adjust to life here. Now Miles Liang and I have fallen apart. Once again, I'm returning to Beijing alone. I thought no one would care about my feelings anymore. Seeing my silence, Chen Junping glanced at me a few more times before continuing. "All right, don't worry. Someone at the law firm told me about your divorce from Miles Liang. The uncontested divorce process isn't complicated. Although the asset division is a bit troublesome, I'll handle it for you. By the way, Qingming Festival is coming up soon. Are you planning to return to Jingju? How about going back now? Now, I was startled, watching him drive towards Harbor City Airport. An abrupt impulse to just leave suddenly welled up inside me. Yes, right now. Is there a problem? I checked, the earliest flight departs in 3.5 hours. We can still make it to visit your father at the cemetery before it closes after landing in Jingju. These past few days, you must have missed your father a lot. His tone was serious, without a hint of jest. Hearing this, my heart suddenly sank, and a wave of sadness welled up in me. More than just these past few days. A few seconds later, I nodded and said, "All right, let's go now." Evening, exactly 6 o'clock, Jingju, Fushanfu Road, Fushan Cemetery. Chen Junping held the chrysanthemums my father loved most in his lifetime, standing solemnly to the side, while I crouched before my father's grave, carefully wiping away the marks left by years of wind and rain on the tombstone. The refined and gentle man in the photo had devoted all his energy to caring for me for 10 years. Those days, though they had passed long ago, now they all appear vividly before my eyes, as if it were just yesterday. I still remember, in fact, at the very beginning. Father did not approve of me being with Miles Liang, although the matters of the previous generation have nothing to do with us, but the resentment and hatred that spanned 20 or 30 years could not be dispelled with just a few words. Father once said, "Your mother was free-spirited and reckless, while Miles Liang's mother was meticulous and earnest. If back then I had fallen in love with his mother, and your mother had loved me, there would be no obstacles to you two being together now." But alas, the one who loved yet couldn't have was Zhu Yun. My father anticipated that I wouldn't be easily accepted by Miles Liang's mother and that I might have to endure some hardships. The only thing he didn't foresee was that Miles Liang would betray me. Yes, Miles Liang and I spent 6 years in Jingju and another 7 in Hong Kong. Now, almost half of my life has been spent with him. I never thought he would betray me. Yet, against all odds, he did betray me. Fate, it seems, never bends to the will of individuals. In this life, love in the end, truly, depends entirely on conscience. Suddenly, a gust of wind arose, sweeping up the scattered dry leaves on the ground. Those leaves floated lightly, swirling in circles around my feet. As if my father knew of my current loneliness and suffering, he had returned to see me through these falling leaves. I held back again and again, but finally couldn't restrain my tears, collapsing before the grave and weeping aloud. I regret. And I regret that I shouldn't have gone to Hong Kong alone for Miles Liang in the first place. I resent that he has now forgotten the promise he made at my father's grave, will be good to me for a lifetime. Not long after, a pair of steady, strong hands rested on my back. Chen Junping didn't look at me, giving me ample space to cry. This past month or so, I've been in so much pain. He crouched beside me, gently patting my back to help me catch my breath. Speaking softly as if comforting a child, "Don't cry, Kala, it's okay." I don't know how long I cried. I didn't stop crying until the cemetery staff urged us to leave. The sky had already darkened, with a crescent moon hanging high in the dome above. Chen Junping and I walked side by side along the cemetery path. Every 5 meters, street lamps flickered with a dim, warm glow. I asked him, just now, was I crying really loudly? He smiled and said, "Yeah, how do you feel? Do you feel much better after crying?" I nodded. Indeed, I felt much better after crying. Then later, "Shall we go eat hot pot? I've heard that the lamb hot pot from the alleyways and hutongs of Jingju is the most delicious. Thick slices of fresh lamb are cut paper thin, like cicada wings. You pick up a whole bunch with your chopsticks and drop them into the copper pot to cook, swishing them up and down for about 10 seconds. Then you dip them in that sesame paste sauce. Oh, the flavor. I haven't had the chance to try it yet," Chen Junping rattled off in a thick Beijing accent, but the imitation was so awful that I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Despite the grating tone, the descriptions were vivid enough to make anyone's mouth water, especially after a good cry. "I feel so hungry I could eat a whole sheep." I quickened my pace and said, "Let's go to Manhengji on Ping'anli West Street. I used to eat there all the time as a kid. It's so delicious." "Chen Junping, I'm hungry." he responded and followed closely by my side. A glimmer of relief flashed in his eyes. We both knew it. Those who have eaten while crying can keep going. The sky seemed to have a hole torn in it. The rain kept falling in a steady drizzle. At the summit of Yangming Mountain stood the old Liang family mansion. The villa's gate was wide open, pitch black, stretching endlessly beyond sight. Miles Liang sat on the sofa, listening to his mother's frustrated scolding. Look at the state you're in now. I think Kalashu has completely stolen your soul. If I had known it would come to this, I never should have sent you to Jingju back then. He remained silent. Yes, if only he had known, he should have chased her to the airport that day. How could he have known that just being a step too late would make all the difference? After Kala got into Chen Juanping's car, the two flew straight back to Jingju and haven't returned since. He sent someone to investigate. Kala didn't return to her old family apartment. Jingju is vast, and finding her would be like searching for a needle in a haystack. Moreover, there's also Chen Junping by her side. He had long noticed Chen Juanping's ulterior motives toward Kala. That year, Kala had merely lent a casual hand by introducing one of her late father's friends to Chen Junping. Who would have thought it would be such a coincidence? Chen Junping made a remarkable comeback with those big deals. After that, he clung to Kala like a stubborn piece of adhesive plaster. Now, even the law firm has stopped caring, followed Kala to Jingju. Their wolfish ambition is now clear for all to see. He kept thinking while rubbing his temples. Where else could Kala go? Will she ever return to Harbor City? Is there any way to make Kala fly back to Harbor City immediately? As he was lost in thought, his mother scolded him again. Have you lost your mind? Did you hear what I just said? You're truly insane. The divorce agreement states you have to give half the family assets to Kalashu. Why don't you just leave with nothing and hand over the entire Liang family to her? Miles Liang suddenly looked up, like a lost ship spotting a lit lighthouse in the dark night. Yes, why hadn't he thought of it, if he was willing to leave with nothing? Kala might not refuse to give him another chance. Miles Liang's mother was startled by his sudden movement. She quickly regained her composure. Grabbing the ornate porcelain cup beside her, she hurled it at him and shouted angrily, "Have you truly lost your mind?" Miles Liang remained silent, immediately standing up and speaking at an extremely fast pace. "Mom, don't worry about my affairs. Rest assured, I won't touch Liang Corporation." Hearing this, his mother was stunned. Her mouth slightly agape, and only after a long pause did she scold, "Good heavens, you wretched boy, don't you dare go. If you still acknowledge me as your mother, you're not allowed to go. Come back." Alas, the stern shouts couldn't stop Miles Liang's rapid footsteps. The winding mountain road. Miles Liang looked much more relaxed after making a few phone calls. He felt he should have done this much earlier. After all, apart from the Liang family, all his assets over these years were built upon that seed money Kala provided. He remembered that year, Uncle Shu passed away, leaving Kala utterly heartbroken. He decided to take Kala back to Harbor City. First, he didn't want her to stay in Jingju, a place filled with sorrow. Second, he had already made up his mind to confront his mother and declare his intention to marry her. However, he never expected his mother would go to such extremes. Not only did she cut off all his funds completely, she also pressured him through the Liang family, forbidding him from doing business in Hong Kong. He knew his mother was trying to scare them off by portraying the hardships of a poor couple. After all, even during those 6 years in Jingju, he and Kala had never suffered any real hardships. Now that we've arrived in Harbor City, it's as if everything has to start from scratch. If Kala had stayed in Jingju, she would have had a home and a career. Uncle Shu's final arrangements were enough to ensure her a lifetime of wealth and peace. Yet, driven by his own selfish desires, he took her away from Jingju. She left the nest that Uncle Shu had built for her. He felt guilty towards Kala. She had just suffered the loss of her father, and now she had to accompany him to live in the unfamiliar city of Hong Kong. He wanted to give Kala the best, but he was crushed by his mother's pressure, unable to move an inch. The immense pressure drove him to become radical. He even considered using the rest of his life as a bargaining chip to enter the game himself. Finally, it was Kala who stopped him. She took out all her savings and patiently told him, Don't rush, I don't want mansions or sports cars, nor wealth and glory. I just want you safe and sound. Take it slow, Miles, let's take it slow. Those 2 years, he learned a great deal, learned that if you can't strike with one hit, then you must patiently bide your time, learned how to outwit his mother, fighting for a sliver of survival under pressure, learned how to build my own nest in the cutthroat world of business, and none of this would have been possible without Kala. I'm afraid it was already a fleeting cloud of smoke long ago. He remembered again, that year when he was 16, his mother sent him to Jingju. People called him the son of a dishonest merchant. The malice of peers is beyond imagination. Countless subtle rejections, cold violence, even countless slanders and false accusations, even with Uncle Shu's protection, they were all children of the family, just joking, teasing him a bit, all kids' stuff, covered it all up. During that time, he was almost broken. It was Kala who stood firmly by his side, using her small frame to shield him from all that malice. She stood at the entrance of the residential building, loudly arguing with those people, protecting me whom she had only met a few times. She was so kind, and so beautiful. If not for meeting Kala, he wouldn't be the Miles Liang of today. From boy to man, Kala was always by his side. In this moment, he understood, he had done wrong, and he accepted the punishment. All he asked was for Kala to give him one more chance. A few days later, the plane landed in Jingju. At the airport, Miles Liang walked briskly, his brow furrowed as he listened to the news from the other end of the phone. Mrs. Liang just had someone sell the flat in Repulse Bay at a price well below market value. It should be sold very soon. That day, Kala said not to keep the property and asked him to cash it out, but he refused. But he never expected that Kala would directly sell those houses. Repulse Bay was the first luxury mansion he bought for Kala. Apart from their marital home, this house holds the greatest meaning for them, and now, he no longer dares to comfort himself. At least Kala didn't sell the marital home, he thought. Kala didn't sell the marital home. The biggest reason might be that the marital home was registered under both their names, making the process more complicated. He recalled how yesterday, Kala had sold all her individually held company shares, converting everything into liquid cash. This news left him restless, prompting him to take the earliest flight to Jingju. He didn't know where Kala was, so he could only take a chance and go to the family residence building. Hearing the news about Kala selling her properties in Harbor City just before landing made him even more anxious. He had no doubt that, given Chen Juanping's capabilities, the property division issues in his divorce agreement with Kala would soon be resolved. Now, if Kala liquidated all her remaining independent assets, he feared he might never see Kala again in this lifetime. He closed his eyes, having made a mistake. Indeed, it was the wrong choice. He shouldn't have signed the divorce papers. He had thought Kala had no other relatives. Even if divorced, she wouldn't leave Harbor City. But now, Kala shows no intention of staying. She's even as decisive as that year, without the slightest hesitation. Moving from Jingju to Harbor City with him was because of love. Now that she no longer loves, she can just as easily leave Harbor City. He took a deep breath and said, "Understood, let's hold off for now." The other end acknowledged and hung up the phone. An hour and a half later, Miles Liang arrived at the family housing complex. Time seemed to stand still here. Even after 7 years, nothing had changed, except for him and Kala. It has come to this. There's no point in thinking about it now. Miles Liang took out the hammer he bought from the hardware store downstairs in the neighborhood. He swung it hard at the door. Soon, the loud noise caught the attention of neighbors both upstairs and downstairs. Someone immediately called the police. Others secretly contacted Kala Shu. 40 minutes later, the police station near the residential building. I watched as Miles Liang was handcuffed to the iron bench. A wave of speechlessness washed over me. Inside the station, several officers were shouting at him. No matter the reason, trespassing is illegal. You even used a hammer to bang on their door. Are all you Hong Kong people this radical? I rubbed my temples while looking at Miles Liang, knowing full well he wasn't listening. At this moment, he stared at me as if possessed. A few seconds later, Chen Junping finished signing all the documents for me. He stood up and said, "All right, it's done. I've arranged for someone to handle the door at the family dormitory. Let's go. Miles Liang immediately stood up, the clinking of the handcuffs somewhat jarring. He looked coldly at Chen Junping. His voice gloomy. Don't think I don't know what you're thinking. Don't forget, Kala and I aren't divorced yet. Chen Junping showed a hint of roguishness, snorted, and raised an eyebrow as he said, "It's about to happen soon. I can wait." My eyelid twitched. Looking at the police officer nearby who was all ears and starting to enjoy the gossip, I couldn't help but grit my teeth. Enough, stop talking. With that, I grabbed my bag and turned to leave. Miles Liang lifted his foot to chase but was restrained by the handcuffs. A series of crackling sounds followed. He glanced at the police officer still enjoying the spectacle. His expression turned to. The police officer quickly removed the handcuffs for him. Just a few seconds. Chen Junping once again beat him to it and chased after me. I didn't stop until I reached the small square near the residential building. The sunlight is just right at this moment. The spring breeze in April carries a gentle warmth. I see Miles Liang walking over. I asked Chen Junping to wait for me somewhere else. He clicked his tongue and said with a hint of grievance, "Kalashu, you're not going to make up with him, are you?" I don't agree. Besides, I'm all alone in Jingju, where else can I go? I looked at his overly dramatic, tea-like demeanor, unable to resist. I gave him a couple of playful punches and laughed. "Wait for me in the car next door. Where else would you go?" He looked at me, a flicker of nervousness flashing in his eyes, and pressed on, "You'll come with me after you finish talking to him, right?" As if afraid of pressuring me, he added another explanation. "What I mean is, you'll go have dinner with me after you finish talking to him, right? Kalashu, I'm hungry." I remembered that night at the cemetery when I had said the same thing to him. "Chen Junping, I'm hungry." I nodded. "Okay, we'll go eat after we finish talking. You go wait in the car first." "All right." Perhaps he noticed the childlike tone in my coaxing. Chen Junping smiled and finally walked toward the car. Miles Liang took in the entire scene, his face deathly pale. Even under the blazing sun, he looked like a drowned ghost, disheveled and wretched. After a few seconds of silence, he said in a low voice, "Kala, come back with me." I shook my head, my voice calm. "Miles Liang, today I'm going to make everything clear to you once and for all." Miles Liang seemed to know what I was about to say. He pursed his lips and spoke before I could. "I know I've wronged you, and I'll do my best to make it up to you. Whatever compensation you want, I'll give it to you." I smiled and looked at him, saying, "I've thought about it. I don't want your compensation. I want you to leave with nothing." Hearing this, as if he had already prepared himself, he nodded vigorously and said, "Kala, I'm willing to leave with nothing. As long as you're willing to come back to Hong Kong with me." I waved my hand to interrupt him, enunciating each word clearly. "Leaving with nothing is the punishment for your infidelity, not some compensation you're giving me. I won't return to Harbor City, nor will I reconcile with you. After today, don't come looking for me again. It's over between us." His entire body shuddered, as if struck by unbearable pain. He couldn't even control the redness that flooded his eyes. After just one glance at me, he hunched over, unable to lift his head. I frowned slightly, remembering that year when his leg bone was broken by someone's collision. Even with a broken leg and a hunched back, he still insisted on climbing Mount Putuo, 3 kneelings and 1 bow. He kowtowed his way up all 1,088 steps to pray for a marriage bond with me. That was his bargaining chip to win the negotiation with his mother. What happened after the radical idea of putting himself in the game? At that time, I used all my savings to persuade him to take it slow. His mother started to get a little anxious. Before long, rumors began to circulate from somewhere. It was said that Miles Liang's mother had finally relented. If Miles Liang and I could climb Mount Putuo and prostrate ourselves on all 1,088 steps to pray for a marriage blessing, she agreed not to interfere in our affairs anymore. Miles Liang, full of ambition, took me on a flight to Jushan overnight, but he didn't know. The moment we landed, someone had their eyes on us. I still remember, at the moment of the car accident, the vehicle could no longer brake. Miles Liang didn't hesitate for a second. He forcefully turned the steering wheel to the right, using the driver's seat to withstand the impact. With a loud bang, All the airbags in the car deployed. As I tearfully unbuckled my seatbelt to check Miles Liang's injuries, he slowly lifted his head and, despite his pale face, still comforted me, saying, "It's okay. Kala, I'm fine." Finally, I had a minor concussion, and he suffered a fractured shin bone. That car was aiming for me in the passenger seat from the very beginning. If Miles Liang hadn't turned the wheel at the last second, I'm afraid my injuries would have been far worse than just a fractured shin bone. Until that very second, only then did we understand why the news about Putuo Mountain had spread. I advised Miles Liang to let it go, just like the day he received 2 slaps from his mother. I cried and said, maybe we should just forget it. He refused to give up. Dragging his broken leg and hunched over, he stubbornly crawled his way up. During the 3 kneelings and 1 bowing ritual, he was in excruciating pain, yet all he said was, "Only in this way can she understand my determination. Only in this way will she no longer trouble you." The marriage talisman obtained by prostrating over 1088 steps, it was his entire sincerity. Now that sincerity is trampled upon, I looked at him and left my final words, "Miles Liang, goodbye forever." After that day, Miles Liang returned to Hong Kong. The divorce agreement was redrafted by him. Apart from the Liang family, he gave all his property to me, left with nothing but the clothes on his back. I didn't say a word, just sold what needed to be sold and dumped what needed to be dumped, completely achieved the small goal of being 30, divorced, single, and financially free. During that time, Iris Xu came to see me several times. Ever since I told her whole family about the little golden egg she was carrying in her belly, and even thoughtfully bought them plane tickets to Hong Kong, she's been driven nearly insane. Back then, I don't know how much effort I spent to save her. Now she has returned to that abyss. It can only be said that every villain meets their match. As for Miles Liang's mother, she fell ill from anger after being forced out of the house with nothing. Later, I don't know what else the mother and son talked about. I only know that his mother actually took the initiative to visit Mount Putuo once. After returning, she sent me a message, "You and your mother are both blessed with good fortune." What does it mean to have a good fate? I don't understand. Betrayed. Let down, yet not defeated. Is that what you call a good fate? I didn't reply, just clicked delete. Not long after I moved back to Jingju, Chen Junping handed over the law firm to someone else. Then he bought the apartment below mine and moved in. I don't know how many times a day I run into him. He seemed completely unfazed, sticking to me whenever we met. Finally, one day, I sat in the passenger seat of his car and asked him, "Chen Junping, aren't you afraid you might regret it one day?" He smiled and asked, "Regret what?" I gazed into the distance, hinting at something deeper. Regret leaving my career in Harbor City, coming to unfamiliar Jingju where I knew no one, only to be let down. He gently tapped the brakes, stopping at the red light. Then he looked at me and said, "Don't be afraid." Side story 1, Miles Liang. The day Iris Xu had a miscarriage due to the torment from her large family, I flew to Jingju to see Kala. Half a year later, she seemed to have transformed like a butterfly reborn. Left alone, I remained imprisoned in place, eroded by pain. She didn't want to see me in the first place, perhaps because she felt it unnecessary, or perhaps Chen Junping didn't want her to see me. Yet, even death row inmates still have the right to appeal. Over the phone, I repeated those words once more. Suddenly, Kala fell silent. Then, her voice calm, she said, "All right, come to Jingju." I thought, times had changed. She thought of those more than 10 years we had together again, decided to give me another chance. I flew to Jingju overnight. Standing before Kala, he spoke word by word. That night, Iris Xu and I were drugged. None of this was what I wanted. I did not betray you, nor have I ever failed our relationship. I think, after the explanation, perhaps she would understand. She might consider whether to give me another chance, but she just glanced at me and asked, "Do you know why I sponsored Iris Xu?" I don't understand why she suddenly asked this, but I still spoke up, because she's smart. My thinking was simple. Perhaps Kala just didn't want to let talent go to waste. After all, Iris Xu is indeed intelligent, even in the remote mountains where educational resources were extremely scarce. She still managed to get into Peking University through her own efforts. As the words fell, Kala shook her head. With a light laugh, she said, I sponsored her, hoping she could fly out. Not because she was smart, but because she was beautiful. Such extreme beauty in that mountain village would have made her live a life of suffering. I fell silent for a few seconds, avoiding Kala's gaze. She smiled again, as if she knew I would react this way. Miles Liang, her voice was very soft, yet it struck like a heavy hammer, shattering the disguise I had nearly deceived even myself with. You accompany her to prenatal checkups, wanting her to keep the baby, not out of pity, nor guilt and self-blame, thinking it's your fault she was drugged and ended up spending a night with you. You do all this because she is simply stunning. At that moment, I finally understood how absolutely right she was to leave me. It was my fault. My suffering is well deserved. Extra 2, Chen Junping. The year I met Kala Shu, it was the most destitute and humiliating time of my life, because I refused to collude with those rich second-generation heirs. They unified their stance within the legal circle, accusing me of taking bribes, breaking laws, and defrauding clients for profit. Any slander and false accusation you can imagine, they threw it all at me. That year, I was like a rat scurrying across the street, with everyone shouting to beat me. There was even a time when I struggled to afford basic food and shelter. I studied law myself, yet I couldn't save myself. 2 friends tried to lend me a hand. But they were also slandered by those people as my accomplices, accused of taking bribes and profiting. They were nearly dragged into the mire with me. At that time, forget about whether the law firm could stay open. I was even on the verge of losing my license to practice law, but I just couldn't bring myself to give up like that. I heard there was a company in Jingju looking for a lawyer to handle a lawsuit. Coincidentally, they didn't want local lawyers from Jingju. I wanted to give it a try, but was stopped by those people again. Watching the opportunity slip away once more, I finally resigned myself to fate. That day, I stood on the AP Lei Chao Bridge. I actually didn't have any intention of ending my life. It's just that life truly feels difficult. Just as I was about to take that step forward, Kala Shu reached out and grabbed my arm. She didn't even care about the things she was carrying. With a loud thud, she dropped them to the ground. She lunged forward suddenly, wrapping her arms around my waist and shouting, "Don't jump, you'll die." I caught the pleasant scent of roses on her. That second, I thought, if she was willing to listen to me talk about my things, then I would try again, and again. I didn't expect that she not only listened to everything I said. After a moment's thought, he said, "I know the person in charge of that company. How about I introduce you to him? If we say that life has destined encounters, my destined encounter is Kala Shu." But not long after, she married Miles Liang. I waited for her for 7 years, and I thought I would keep waiting forever, until the day I found out she was divorcing Miles Liang. After I had taken care of everything, I flew back to Harbor City overnight, changing planes twice. The second I rolled down the window to light her cigarette, I knew I wouldn't miss it again, nor would I let go again.